Shall we do it? Shall we scorch the mortal world? What do you think about the Great Conversion? Stupid.
The Regina storyline, I think, is really confronting as it progresses and everything, but I also think it's a really natural progression for Louis. Do you agree with that, and why so?
Yeah, no, I agree. I think that it's like there's an aspect of Louis that I think is kind of, do you know what I was going to say? He's like addicted to grief.
Oh.
That's like kind of a part of his, and I think that is true to an extent. But I also, how do you ever like grieve in that, you know? Like, I think something that is really unique about this show and about this story is that it's not just about sort of tying up loose ends. And like, this is a conversation we've had about, you know, with Louis, I'm like, you just so beautifully rounded everything off. But then, like they live forever.
Yeah, and
you have to sit in your psychological all the time. Like the residue's gonna.
And Dubai was only 11 days, which I hear.
Yeah, it's not been.
That.
Yeah, and it's really, really uncomfortable. It's almost, I feel like the Regina stuff is the most icky I've felt about Louis. And sometimes there's like, you know, it's hard to, I don't know. I mean, like you said earlier on about Lestat and Gabriella, and it's so you want to play in the dirt, you know? You don't want it to all be so clean and, yeah.
Talk about why Daniel is so enraged when Armand shows up to the bowling alley and is trying to make amends. I can't believe he's doing the steps. That's wild.
Well, he was... Daniel has been on, since the very first time he met this guy, he's been on going back to the 70s, he's been on, you know, should he be a vampire? Shouldn't he be? Is this something he wants? Is this something he says to Louis, you know, don't give it to me. And then he changes his mind about it. So at the point at which we're in the more modern era, he's made a decision not to be a vampire, and this guy has decided to decide for him to make him into a vampire. That's what he's angry about. He didn't, I mean, just the fact of doing something against your will, which is clearly, there was going to be a scene that doesn't exist, or it exists in our imagination, of what actually happened on that airplane and when he attacked me. But it's pretty violent. I mean, he was violently made into a vampire. And then why that happened keeps getting, I mean, to hear any excuses of why this has happened and what he really feels is so repulsive to Daniel. It's like, I don't care what your reasons were. You did something, well, we won't use the word, but you did something to me against my will.
Delaney, the Regina storyline is, I think, a very confronting thing, but also feels a really natural progression for Louis as a character. What was your reaction to first reading that, and how did it feel to play this completely new character who's supposed to be channeling Claudia?
Yeah, I was kind of shocked when I first got the script. I said in the other room, I went to the writer's room and they showed me like a board with Post-it notes everywhere, and they were like, just trust us. Got the script and I was like, oh, okay, like this is actually really, really sad. And I think, Louis is working out his grief, and it's at the expense of another person now. And, well, is it? Yeah, kind of in a way. And, I was very happy to, I mean, like, what a privilege to play two characters in one show. It's very rare.
When did you learn that the past Devil's Minion story would come to fruition? Was this something you knew in season 2, or did you find out in season 3?
Did it come to fruition?
Well, we have that scene, I think, in 4 or 5 where Armand explains how he was watching Daniel through all those years.
Listen, Kelly, it's all coming to fruition. The thing we said in the other interview that Armand, the vampire Armand, and to a certain extent also the Devil's Minion, is something that has been through line through season 1, 2, and 3, and it's been sprinkled in. And I think we haven't finished telling that story yet. And I think we've only just had this kind of revelation that, there was this 52 years of, and that just brings so many possibilities. And I had an inkling in season 1 that might be how we might be going with it.
But my job on this show has always been full of mystery. I don't always know that these things are going to be happening or that they're even part of the story. I didn't know in the first season that Rashid was actually Armand. I didn't know that until we got to the last episode. And for Daniel, in general, it's endless revelations of learning more about his own life that he thought he knew, which he wasn't real happy with his personal life to begin with. He could have screwed up in a lot of ways. And now it turns out it's kind of overwhelming, and he has to keep keep swimming upstream as far as, I mean, what is your personality? I mean, it's only what you think you had as an experience. It's only what you think you did in your life. And to find out that all of this is completely different than what you thought it was, then who are you? Yeah. And there you are, a vampire who doesn't know who he is. It's pretty rough.
Yeah. Well, now in theory, he's got time to figure it all out, right? She says in episode 4 that she's no longer a woman, no longer a mother, no longer strapped down by any social norms. Can you expand on what she means by no longer being a woman?
Yeah, I mean, she is released. She has lived in so many times where women were so limited, and I do think that when she had to live through him, and she still is choosing to live through him even when she's a vampire, because she's using him as an instrument, as certainly in this season at this point. But I think she feels genderless and released.
When we first hear her talk, explain the significance of everything that she's saying.
Yeah, she's I think Marius says a line where he says, "Oh, she's alive, very much alive."
Wow.
And yeah, I know, it's even where he says it, I was like, ooh. But so she's aware, of course she's aware within the confines of the environment that she's been held in for all of that time, but she has an awareness of what's been going on. But I think there is something really interesting that happens to us when we're physically incapacitated, right? The force with which she expresses herself in that moment is just, it's the cork popping out of the bottle, So, but there's still a lot of questioning because she hasn't been out of that space for so long. So she needs to go out there and see exactly what the answer is to all of these questions that she has about what she's been sensing, observing, seeing over the millennia. She's awake.
That's terrifying.
Yeah.
She's been stuck like that for a very long time.
Yeah.
Yeah. So how much anger does she have because she's been stuck?
A fair bit. A fair bit. I think, she reaches a point at the end of her episode where she says, "I'm going to take it upon myself, essentially, to do something about this," and that obviously extends into the rest of her journey. And I wonder, even thinking about it now, how much powerlessness she's felt over the millennia, not just frustration at what's happening, but also I could be out there, rectifying it or doing something about it, or she hasn't been able to be an active participant in any of it. And there's been a reason for that, for the protection of vampire kind, but LESTAT's showing up in her life is a real opportunity, not just to connect to him in the way that all of these vampires are clearly seeking and trying to find each other and find love and this kind of intensity of connection through the loneliness that you've described about their condition. But also oh, great, now I've got a partner in crime. I can go and fix this thing that I've been looking at for a long time that seems to have gone very wrong.
Talk about how you all talked about expressing Akasha's ancient power, because with Armand, he's the oldest vampire we've seen in the show before Akasha, and his eyes shake and vibrate when his powers are really unleashing. So how did you guys want that to be manifested in Akasha.
Yeah, again, I think we only see the first glimpse of her, so there is so much to be found. And that was one of the things when I reached Toronto that, you know, the writer said, we've got to figure out how to make you more powerful than these guys, because there's already a lot going on in terms of how their power manifests. I think one of the extraordinary things about episode 5 is, you know, Akasha is still partly kind of frozen to this table, but LESTAT is just spinning in the air, like uncontrollably. And I think for me, there was something about that image that spoke to me of her power without me really having to do much in the speech or the text or my own performance. It's just that kind of physical juxtaposition of her very fixed and very focused on this kind of the spewing of whatever this emotion and stream of consciousness is that's coming out of her, and then he's just in absolute disarray in the air, obviously, you know, as a byproduct of what's awakening in her. And that's when she's not even fully out of stone yet. So yeah, we got to find something really epic and cool.
In the book, LESTAT's justification about his incestuous dynamic with Gabriella isn't really questioned, but albeit it's still very confronting. So why did you want to expand on that point specifically?
Well, I think, you know, it came from a really specific vision, you know, in conjunction with Anne Rice and like what she has on the page. You know, we had a very specific idea about what that incest was, where it came from, you know, and it has a bunch of different elements in it. So Gabriella is living in a cage because she's living in a particular era as a woman, and she's locked into this horrible marriage and being forced to have all these babies who die or just like their dad on one hand, and then the only kid that is like her or that she has anything in common with is LESTAT, of course. So there's like a natural pull between them. And then, of course, you know, I think like for her, there's just like an absolute liberation when she's a vampire. And that kind of like full liberation out of being a mother or a woman or anything, you know, leads to what it leads to. You
have a writing credit on the in the show this season because of your songs, and you were in the writer's room for many of the days. Roland has said that you would like jump out of the room to go write a song when inspiration hit. I wonder what were some things that you heard in the writer's room that made you get up and be like, I have to go write a song right now?
It was discussions about certain characters for the most part, because we were early on in the writer's room figuring out exactly who from previous seasons or who from the book that had not been in previous seasons were going to be in season 3, what their relationship was to LESTAT, what it had been in previous seasons or in the book, how that was going to be different in season 3, and how LESTAT felt about those things. So for example, when we determined fairly early on in the writer's room that Armand was going to be back, and that the relationship between Armand and LESTAT would be an adversarial one for at least some part of their experience together, I felt like LESTAT needed to comment on that because it was going to be a big part of the show, and we wanted something musical to go along with that. And I guess, I'm not sure exactly why that made me think, oh, he needs to write a diss track about Armand, and it needs to sound like it came from
perfect idea.
Came from the musical Grease. I don't know why. That was LESTAT's stylistic choice. But that is what showed up in my brain once we determined that at the writer's room table. So I went off and I made a draft of that, and then I brought it back. I think I sent it to Roland first, like overnight, and then he played it for everyone in the writer's room the next day. And usually when he played it for everybody in the writer's room the next day, that told me like, oh, we're using the song. It's going in the show somehow. We don't know exactly how yet or when or where, but it's going to be in the shows somewhere.
Yeah.
And then like a month later, maybe even 6 weeks later, when we figured out where it was going and what it was doing, what it needed to say, then Roland came back to me and was like, hey, this first verse is great and the chorus is great, but we need a different second verse because there are things that we have discovered at the writer's room table that are different about Armand and LESTAT's relationship to Armand than what we thought like 6 weeks ago. So then I went back and rewrote the second verse to reflect those changes, and there's a lot of that, a lot of back and forth between us.